God, Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer. Amen. I'm back! It sure is good to be back with you. A lot has happened in my life in these last 3 months. I served as interim rector of Christ and Holy Trinity in Westport and very much enjoyed being back in pastoral ministry. And now I'm happy to just being back to being an itinerant preacher, a circuit rider. And here I am. In addition to my time in Westport, I downsized my house over these last 3 months, put it on the market, and I think I have a buyer. It has been a busy time, and God is good all the time. All the time, God is good, yes. Today we hear Jesus back in his hometown of Nazareth after a long stretch of fruitful ministry. In the weeks preceding his return, he has secured the loyalty of 12 disciples, described God's kingdom with provocative parables, exorcised demons, healed the sick, calmed the storm, and raised a little girl from the dead. He has become, in other words, a local hero, or so we would think. On Saturday morning, as was his custom, he went to the synagogue and he began to teach in the tradition of the rabbis. At first, things go well. His townspeople receive his words with astonishment and curiosity. Where did this kid get all this? They're asking each other. What is this wisdom that's been given to him? What kind of things is he doing? Powerful things that he's doing. And then, almost without warning, something happens. Someone in the crowd, maybe a jealous old neighbor of Mary's, maybe one of the kids Jesus used to play with as a little boy, or maybe even the town gossip who loves gossip, starts asking prickly questions. Isn't this the carpenter, the son of Mary, and the brother of James and Joseph and Judas and Simon? And here are his sisters too. We know his sisters. At this point, the mood in the synagogue changes. And suddenly, people's attitude changes, and what they've been curious about, they now become contemptible about. They take offense. They decide Jesus is presuming too much. He is, after all, this hometown kid. In her sermon, Sapping God's Strength, the Reverend Barbara Brown Taylor points out, which I thought this was interesting, I just learned this, that to identify someone by his mother in Jesus' day is to question his legitimacy. To learn the fact, to highlight the fact that no one knows for sure who his dad was or is. In other words, to refer to Jesus as the son of Mary is a calculated act on the part of the parishioner or the villagers to weaponize his birth story and to humiliate him into silence. In a social system where one's status is fixed at birth, it's not possible for someone like Jesus, a carpenter, that's what he was, of questionable parentage, to amount to anything, at least in their thinking. He has no business rising up over his dicey beginnings, no business speaking with authority, no business becoming a leader, much less the Messiah. We know exactly where you come from, kid. Don't get too big for your britches. Remember your place. I'll bet we've all heard those words at one time or another in our lives. Don't think you can do that. You're not smart enough. You're not powerful enough. You didn't go to college. You're of the wrong ethnicity. You're just a girl. Those words are hurtful, spirit-killing. My father told me I couldn't go to seminary because I was a girl, and girls didn't go to seminary. Yep. some 50 years ago. Remember always that Jesus was fully human in addition to being divine, so that things that hurt you and me also hurt him. To have your family and your friends diss you as the people of Nazareth did is painful, disheartening, off-putting. Rejection is as uncomfortable for him as it is for you and me. The truly sad thing about this story is that the townspeople's suspicion and resentment diminished Jesus' ability to work good on their behalf. He could do no deed of power there, says Mark. In some mysterious and disturbing way, the people's small-mindedness, their lack of trust, and their inability to embrace a new facet of Jesus' life and mission keep them in spiritual poverty. And those words and that experience was harmful to Jesus. This instance in the life of Jesus raises some important questions for us in the 21st century. Jesus offends his beloved community in this story. Maybe if the Jesus we worship never offends us, then it's not really Jesus we're worshiping. I think especially the command to love our neighbors as ourselves. It's easy to love the neighbors, the friends, the people we know. It's a lot harder to extend ourselves beyond our own boundaries. I confess that I have a hard time in seeing Jesus in persons with whom I don't share the same political or world views. I don't love every person I meet as myself. I draw boundaries around who is in and who is out. Jesus is calling us to see the world as he does, in love and acceptance and wholeness. And when we don't, we're marginalizing him. God's love is for all persons. And as the saying goes, God has no hands and feet to express that love, but ours, yours and mine. This past week we celebrated Independence Day, July 4th. It's a mixed bag, because as a country we haven't and still don't live up to the words we proclaim as our founding documents. When Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, little did he know that 250 years later, school children would be having committed his words to memory as part of going to school. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. What could that slave-owning Jefferson have meant by asserting that being created equal and being endowed with certain unalienable rights are self-evident truths? What may have been obvious to Jefferson was probably not evident to those people who worked for him under forced subjugation. And given the way we still treat different members of our society differently, it's not obvious that we're convinced of the truths that all people are created equal and endowed by their Creator with unalienable rights. And until such time we're ready to live these truths by adjusting our rhetoric in this country and enacting laws that benefit all people equitably and ending the punishment of the poor for being poor, we probably ought to practice a little more reticence suggesting that these truths are obvious or self-evident. Currently, there are persons in this who are trying to remake this country into a Christian country with beliefs that they call Christian, but do not reflect the teachings of Jesus. Many things are being labeled as quote-unquote Christian today, such as opposition to abortion and LGBTQ rights, and being anti-immigrant sentiment, and desiring a religious government. None of these reflect the teachings of Jesus. Jesus was not white or racist or homophobic or nationalistic or full of hate. Instead, Jesus emphasized compassion, care for the poor and the marginalized, and social justice principles that today seem to be overshadowed by other agendas. We need to remember that our political forebears, those who wrote the founding documents, were not Christian. They were deists, persons who believed in a creator, but not a God who took flesh and became human in Jesus. And many of them were slaveholders, persons who didn't consider that all men were created equal, just white men, and certainly not women either. The Declaration has a vision that this country has failed to live up to, and there are mighty forces standing in the way of our living into it now. We have made some progress in 250 years, but it seems to me that you and I, proclaiming a gospel that embraces and accepts all, the gospel of Jesus, have the opportunity to do all that we can do to make real and alive the vision of the Declaration. That's the ongoing reason for marking this holiday, and our responsibility as followers of Jesus. Amen.